go. Did you like the video? So my son did that video. He graduated IB like over a year ago, and he's now trying to freelance, right? Because I'm that type of mother that says, don't go to university yet. First, learn to earn. So he's doing freelancing and he's trying to self-fund. I'm still feeding him though, so let's see. So let's talk about inclusive innovation today. So, everything that Box said is something that's so close to my heart, but I come from the other side. I come from the community side, right? So I'm not a techie, although I did fall in love with technology somewhere along the lines. And I see technology as an empowerment tool. I'm not as excited about code as maybe some of you guys, but when I see the potential of technology to really change the world, then that's what makes me excited. So this is a quick intro to me, in case you're wondering, like, what is this accent? It said on there that she was from the Philippines, but she doesn't sound Filipino. So I was born in the Philippines. My mom's Filipino, my dad's British. I grew up in the UK. I went to high school in Pampanga. My parents became entrepreneurs and decided to run a pig farm, which was then blown up by a volcano. I became cabin crew for British Airways. I met my husband and ran an IT company with him. I lived and worked in Singapore, which is my other home, and I came back to the Philippines in 2016. Oh, and I'm married with my 3 kids. I'm actually my husband's boss now. He's our CTO, and all of my kids and pets are boys. I don't know how that happened for someone who's worked in the women's space for so long. So that's me. So I just want to know, before I move on to the next slide, actually, how many, who's in the room? So I know that obviously lots of you are in the tech development space. Any business people? No business owners? Few? Any sort of corporate leaders who are not in tech? Not on the tech side, but more on the business side? Mostly tech. Who's in tech? So hard to figure it out when you ask the audience a question, right? You just you see some vague movements and some scratching, and you never really get a proper answer. Anyway, I did get the demographics from the organizers before I came up, so I have a vague idea of who all of you are. So I just want to talk about the way we work in general. So how many of you work from home? Quite a lot. I think the developers are the lucky guys that get to negotiate a little bit more about how they work, because there's such a big demand, right, for development talent. How many of you are still stuck in an office? Oh, I'm so sorry. So this is how we used to work. But the way we work is changing very, very rapidly. This is, when you look at this is kind of like how you describe the past. But unfortunately, there are still many offices that look a little bit like this. I think just the monitors got smaller. But apart from that, the offices still kind of look like that. How many of you work in an office that looks a little bit like this? No one wants to admit to it. I went to a government office and I was like, and this is the old way of work. And then I looked and I realized that their office looked exactly like this. So it was a little bit awkward. But of course, this is the new way of work, right? It's the Instagrammable way of work. How many of you work like this? How many of you go to the beach and take a photo of you looking like this and then try and imply that this is how you work because it looks cool? So this is how I work. So all my kids, my pets, everything, all the chaos in the house. And most of the time I'm unglamorously sitting like this guy on the sofa. My cat's not that fat yet, but I'm sure it will be soon. But the freelance market is huge, right? How many of you guys are freelancers as opposed to working for companies? Some, few, not many, surprising. The freelance market is growing very, very fast. And in the US, look at this figure. It's creeping up to sort of 57 million now. And look at the amount of money that they're bringing to the US economy. 1.4 trillion every year. There's an opportunity in the Philippines, and the interesting thing about the freelance market is some studies are saying that it's about 50-50. So it's a big opportunity in a country like the Philippines where, well, countries everywhere actually, where women drop out of the workforce. In fact, there are some studies that show that women actually benefit in the freelance economy and they're winning more gigs and earning more money. So, we have this discussion about the gender pay gap that everyone's very concerned about, and it's still a fight that's ongoing. In the freelance work, it doesn't seem to translate like that. So why? It could be because the flexibility and the productivity of working from anywhere is actually very empowering for women, so they can actually get the job done in the same way as you would have had to do if you didn't have to take care of family and everything else at home. So I've actually been working from home for so long now, I couldn't possibly imagine working in an office. But the interesting thing is that in the past, it was just, you had to either work in an office as an employee, or you had to become an entrepreneur or a freelancer. But honestly, not everybody wants to work like that. So, now we're looking at that third option. You can still be part of a team, and you can actually work from anywhere. You don't necessarily need to be in a specific place to do a job, right? So location independence is very important, and it's important for companies to think about it, because location independence is actually the competitor of companies in various different industries. Why would, in the past, companies were competing with each other for talent, right? But now you have to compete with the freelance economy as well. And I know that lots and lots of developers that I speak to do work from home already for overseas companies. So why is it an overseas company would be willing to hire a remote worker from the Philippines, but possibly a Philippines company wouldn't? So these are the kind of things that we're thinking about. It's not that easy, actually. It's not that simple. But this is how we used to work, If you go to an office or you go to a job and you're a mom, then, you got to do this stressful thing in the morning, drop the kid off, pick the kid up, and everything else. And of course, if you're a working father with the responsibility of your children, then that's also going to impact you, right? We're not saying that these are just problems that women have, and this is a solution for women specifically, but it definitely helps women, because women, for the most part, by choice or otherwise, are the main sort of carer in the family. So this is the new way of work, the ideal, right? The work-from-home woman who sits at her comfortable kitchen with her daughter helping, which is never really the truth. For those of you that work from home, you'll know it's a little bit more like this. Do you remember this guy? It was such a sensation. He's sitting at his desk and he looks very official, and he's talking about a very serious news topic, and everything looks great. He's got his map in the background and it looks very officey, and it really looked like he was in some office. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the live interview, this little cheeky kid doing this dance, it's my favorite dance, just kind of like waltzes in, and he's absolutely mortified. It's the worst thing that can happen to him, right? He's live on TV and all his credibility is crashing down. But actually, he humanized everyone who works from home, right? He made it kind of okay. Because when I speak to clients on the phone, I'm scared that one of my kids or my dog or the guy who walks past my window at 9 a.m. or sometimes 10 shouting, "Taho," is going to turn up and ruin my credibility. Or some neighbor's cockerel is going to start crowing and I have to pretend that it's my alarm clock. So, there's this kind of challenge of representing yourself professionally when you work from home. But in reality, situations like this make it normal. I speak to guys who work from home in the US, right, and on video call. And I'm in my room, and I've turned my desk around because my bed is there, and I don't want them to see my bed in the background. So I put my desk this way, and then on my background I have my inspirational quotes, make myself look credible, and I'm doing my video conferencing. And then I get on the phone to guys in San Francisco or wherever else, and they've got their bed, and it's messy, and they've got their kid running around. They don't care, because as long as they're doing the job, and they can get the job done, it's absolutely fine to them. So I think the stigma of remote work is changing a little bit. But this is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? We never want to do solutions just for the sake of it. In the US alone, around 43% of women leave their careers when they have children. Can you imagine in the Philippines? How many of us have struggled to get an education, or have had parents who have struggled to give us an education, or are struggling to give our kids an education. And if they're a woman, there's a chance that almost half of them will actually quit their job when they reach family-bearing age. How many of you have wives that have, you're kind of all quite young, but those of you who are old enough to be married and have kids, how many wives are thinking of quitting their jobs or have quit their jobs after having kids? It's kind of a bit of a talent drain, and it's a shame because when you look at the drop-off rate in companies of female leadership, it's huge, right? Most of the women don't make it all the way to the top in some companies and some industries. But if there was a way for women to work more flexibly, then maybe we could retain the talent. In fact, in the Philippines alone, we estimate from our research that there's around 5 million women out of the workforce because of family commitments. But that's at all levels. So those who have no skills and those who are highly skilled state the reason that they're not in the workforce is because of family commitments. So this is one of the things that I experienced growing up. My mom was a domestic worker, but she was actually one of the few who went to the UK and met my dad there and got married there. But most of my mom's friends, my titas, my aunties, had left their kids behind. I was one of the only kids. They would show me a picture and they would say, "This is my daughter, she's the same age as you." And I'd be like, "Where is she?" Because I want to play, right? Because I'm a kid. And she said, "She's in the Philippines. I had to leave her behind." I couldn't even understand that concept when I was a child. How many of you have OFW families or have a friend who has had to leave their family and go abroad for years and years? Loads, right? It's a culture in the Philippines. It's the norm. We celebrate our OFWs, but actually, for many years, it's a sacrifice that women have to make. Technology brings opportunities that means that we don't have to sacrifice anymore. Work should not be a sacrifice, right? Work should be an opportunity. And of course, this is the other heartbreaking reality, right? Which is worse? In fact, I wonder if this lady is just about to go through EDSA. It's crazy. When I was in Singapore and my husband and I wanted to come back to the Philippines, I always hear about the traffic. How many of you who are not from the Philippines have heard of the traffic in the Philippines? When you experienced it, was it worse than even the hype, right? It's crazy. I'm lucky because I don't work in an office, so I come out maybe once or twice a week and I sit in a Grab because I don't need a car because I hardly ever go out. And I'm online and I have my phone and I'm doing my work or whatever it is that I want to do. I'm pretty much doing exactly the same while I'm sat in the Grab as I would be doing at home. So it doesn't bother me, but I don't have to drive through it and I don't have to commute through it every single day. Whenever I'm sat in traffic and I feel frustrated, I remind myself that I just do this once or twice a week in relative luxury, and I look out around me and I see all those poor souls who are just trying to get on a Jeep or something to get home. So this is why we created Connected Women Jobs. So Connected Women Jobs is a platform that allows Filipino women to go into the platform and look for remote work opportunities. We just launched it last year. Actually, my husband and I, neither of us are developers, but we did run an IT company in the UK, a small IT company doing innovative solutions like deploying Wi-Fi networks and doing remote work solutions back when it was kind of like early. We're always trying to solve problems, and we thought if we could put this platform that's specifically for women, that helps women land jobs that suit them and what they're looking for in their career, it could actually open up, something more for them, a different option to entrepreneurship or remote or freelancing if that's not really what they want to do. So of course we start with data, right? And we want to know what opportunities are they actually looking for. So actually studies also show that remote companies have 3 times more women in leadership roles than traditional companies. So those of you that are thinking about bringing more women into your teams and more women into your leadership, you might want to think about remote work. Our company is already 100% remote work, and one of my team posted on Facebook the other day this 4-day work week. Has anyone seen it? And she literally just posted it, and she didn't even make a comment. She posted it. So I messaged her immediately. I was like, "You want to try it?" She was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "You want to try the 4-day work week?" week. She was like, just me? I was like, well, yeah, just you first, and let's see how it works. Like, we're always looking for ways to help people work more effectively. So the 4-day work week is you work four 10-hour days, and then you have 3 days off. Makes sense, right? Sometimes you need a bit more time to get into the rhythm of your work, and then you need an extra day to deal with all that stuff that you need to do that you don't have time to do during the week. So we always want to try ways to empower our teams to work better and more effectively and be happier in their work. So one thing we do know is that location-independent work is growing, and as women are definitely a growing economic force, and the Philippines is doing amazingly well in the freelance industry. We're actually number 6 in the top 10 fastest growing freelance economies in the world. So I think that's a really great opportunity, but I definitely see that not everyone wants to freelance. Because the thing is with freelancing, it's very transactional, right? You find a client, you do a gig, and then you have to do the billing and everything else, just like an entrepreneur, the collecting of the money, the pitching of your services, the putting the proposals in. That's not really for everyone. And also, it can be a little bit disconnected from a cause or a meaning. So I think, a lot of freelancers come to us because they're tired of being in that kind of situation. So when I was cabin crew, I was part of like 11,000 cabin crew that flew out of one of the UK airports. And it was amazing. It was such a fun job. But every single flight for 10 years, it was almost all new people. You start to lose your sense of connection and your relationships and things like that. It actually gets very lonely after a while. So, we're looking at, as well at how do you maintain that sense of purpose, that sense of connection and being part of something bigger than yourself if you're working in remote work. So here is some of the data that we looked at from our own community. We have about 60,000 women in our community now, up from 5,000 in April 2018. So our community is growing pretty fast. So we asked 5,000 of them, or almost 5,000 of them, to complete a survey about their work challenges. And from the applicants who said that they were interested in looking for remote work, 56% of them said that they were looking for flexible work. And then we have 31% on full-time and 13% on part-time. But the interesting thing is that of this pie, 40% of them were actually looking for full-time 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. So that indication of flexibility doesn't mean that they want to work less hours. It just means that they want to work the hours that best suit them, which makes sense, right? Like I said earlier, my team, we all check in, although we're remote, at 9, and we check out at 6, and we pretty much work like an office, but online. But our development team swan in whenever they want. I don't ever know where they are, but they get the job done, right? Because it's output-based. So they can actually afford that flexibility, because as long as the job is done and the bits are built, then no one's really going to give them any hassle. This is another interesting thing. So when my husband and I came back to the Philippines, we wanted to help women get more opportunities. So because, we were in Singapore for 6 years, and from the other side of the coin, when my mom was a maid in the UK, I went to Singapore, and I actually had the opportunity to have my own helper. And it was a really sad story, Her name's Beth, and she was a widow. Her husband died when her 2 kids were just little. And what happened was she went to Singapore to become a maid because she didn't really have any other opportunities. There's so many women like Beth. But the saddest part is she hadn't been home for 8 years. Can you imagine? You lose your husband, her kids were just tiny, and so she's had to leave the kids to go and work so that she can educate her children. And she hadn't been home for 8 years. And it's like a 3-hour flight. It was so heartbreaking for me that this could happen. You're never going to get those years back, right? So I said to my husband, I want to go back to the Philippines. I've been running communities for women entrepreneurs for like 14 years. Actually, we worked with Google in Singapore to run the Women Entrepreneurs on the Web program. So it was all about empowering women to use Google tools better. And, when this thing happened, and I kept thinking about the women in the Philippines, and I hadn't been back for so long, and I said to my husband, we should go back to the Philippines and see if we can go and upskill women like Beth who have no other option, and we could give them maybe other jobs. When we came back and we did this survey, I looked at the survey and I was really shocked because 89% have college degrees or above. So it was not the demographic that we were thinking that we were coming to help. And 60% of them have team leader positions or higher. And the crazy thing is, we were thinking women in the provinces might need more opportunities. 33% come from Metro Manila. Well, of course, now I understand why, now that I've seen the commute. But at the time, none of it made sense. And of course, now that I think about it, this is not representative of the need for jobs, right? Because the others are not even in this pie. They don't even have connection. They don't even have the ability to complete a survey form with 30 questions. So, I looked at this, and so we decided to start with the jobs platform because that's a way to help the ones that are easy to help quickly. But what about all of the rest, right? So when we look at this survey, the challenges that the ladies stated that were the biggest challenges that they had in their careers in the Philippines were location from available jobs, family commitments, and not enough suitable jobs, which is probably linked to the first one anyway. The age range is 20 years old to 60, and the median age is 33. So you can see that it's probably, again, demonstrating that the family commitments is actually impacting the ability to go to work. So, we feel that remote work and the remote work economy really helps women gain back the opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And it's a brilliant opportunity for businesses to leverage on this. I mean, there are ways that you can make remote work. And there are studies that show that remote work employees are even more productive, right? Because they're less tired and they can actually focus. It's still a challenge. It's not necessarily easy. We're working with one of the biggest BPOs in the Philippines right now, piloting their work-at-home program, because they want to do it. They do it in the US, but they want to do it here. And there are all different complexities to doing something in a market like the Philippines, right? Like I mentioned, like in the US, they may not have the same problem with the taho seller shouting through the window and things like that. And also, one of the challenges that I hear from my team is, like your family in your home, like your grandmother who's asked you to go up the road and buy some eggs, and she doesn't understand that when you're sitting looking at your phone or computer that you're working. And so, like, I've had team members that vanish, and I'm like, where did you go? And she's like, oh, my grandma just asked me to pop up the road and buy some eggs. So there's definitely some education, on both sides. But this is what I want to talk about today, because that's just an example, right? This is how we're trying to use innovation to be more inclusive for women. But what about the others? Right? We talk about these 89% of educated women that we want to actually help get jobs, and then maybe the next segment down, we have some programs that we're working on with the government to help those slightly less skilled get into the labor force. But what about the ones with no skills, right? Because inclusive innovation means that you are up at night worrying, because even though you're helping this group of people, there's another group, and another group, and another group, and another group. It just keeps leading to another bigger problem. The more you try and solve the problem, it just, it gives you another problem to solve. And if you're a problem solver or an entrepreneur like me, it will literally keep you up at night. We met with a foundation last year who said to us, look, I hear you're bringing tech jobs to women. Can you help our women in our community? They have like a massive coastal community. And these communities are fisher families. And they said, we have projects. We don't want them to fish because we're trying to rest the ocean. So, can you give them other jobs online so that they don't have to fish and the oceans can rest, but they still have a livelihood? And we said, sure, let's talk about these people, what are their skills? They don't really have skills. They really have basic skills. So I said, look, I drew the pyramid of skills, and right now we're only matching jobs to the top tier. I said, look, I don't think we can do it now because it would take so long to actually train them from there to get them up to the matchability, the job hiring level for the type of jobs we have, that I had to walk away. But I said, I'll think about it, and let me come up with something. It's been a year, but I think I've come up with something. So there are 5 million Filipino women not in the workforce because of family commitments. But what about those who aren't women? What about the youth? What about the elderly? What about the underprivileged of every class and type? What about the children? You just can't stop thinking about these things because there's 100 million people in the Philippines, all with different types of problems, and inclusive innovation means that every single one of these problems is worth solving. So now you're never going to sleep, right? All the problems of the world I've just thrown at you, and now it's on your mind. And that's how I feel sometimes, and it feels impossible. It actually feels impossible because there are so many problems, and how are we possibly going to solve them? But then I like to break things down, right? Because I have this habit of overwhelming myself, as you can probably tell. But then I thought, you know what? If just 100,000 people, that's just 0.1% of the Philippines population, right? Each committed to helping 1,000 people. That's not such a big number with tech, right? I mean, if I had to manually go out and help 1,000 people, it would take me a long time. But using technology, if I could help 1,000 people, that 0.1% of us, we could help every single person in the country. And now I'm like, seems doable. What do you think, right? And you guys have the brains, and you have the tools, and you have the potential and the possibility and everything you need, we all do, to make that difference. So I hope when you think about inclusive innovation, you just keep thinking, what about the others? Because 100 million people in the Philippines is not the world. And that's it. Thank you.